Hey, Jed Blue here, recording yet another attempt at a vlog about Steven Universe, episodes 19 through 21. Previous attempts were interrupted by me forgetting basically everything in the universe, then a second attempt interrupted by a phone call from my elderly mother, which is probably more important than talking about cartoons, I guess. Love you, Mom. And so now, finally, here I am to record the actual vlog. Let's see if I can actually remember anything. So, first episode that I watched was Rose's Room. Yes, very good episode. I really liked this one. I think it's one of my favorites so far. I am a sucker for this kind of Twilight Zone, everything slightly off in an otherwise normal place kind of creepiness, which was very effectively creepy for a kids show, you know? It hit just the right levels. So, the thing that jumped out from the start of this episode was the video game stuff. The game Steven plays, Golf Quest Mini, I think it was called, first off, starts out very, very clearly it's Pokemon. He is clearly in a mini-golf-themed version of Professor Oak's lab. And then we get glimpses of it that look more like a more traditional Dragon Quest clone, which Pokemon is a very odd Dragon Quest clone. This looks like a much more typical one. Right down to the ending twist of the same professor who gave him the Mithril Club with a "It's dangerous out there, take this, don't think I didn't notice that" Zelda reference. And the Mithril, of course, is more of a Final Fantasy thing. I mean, obviously it's originally a Tolkien thing, but I don't recall ever seeing it in the little bit I've played of Dragon Quest. It's all over the place in the Final Fantasy games, especially the early ones. Either way, we end with that same professor being the final boss, at least of the path which leads to the secret ending, which Steven then doesn't get to see because the gems come home, and he's upset and wants a place that's just his. And his gem responds by opening up the titular Rose's room, which used to be his mom's and now is his. And it's more or less a Lotus Eater machine. It's a place where whatever he wishes for is. It's a place where everything he wants is his instantly, but none of it's real. The game that he pops into existence and then gets to play and see the real ending, that doesn't bear much resemblance to what little we saw of what was going on behind the gems. So it's probably Steven's imagination of what the ending might have been. This then becomes more or less confirmed when he tries to eat a donut he created with his mind and it just poofs away. Because it's not real. He can't get any sustenance from what's in this false realm. He then wishes to leave, but because he does not wish to go back to the other gems, he just wishes out of this cloud space, what happens is it creates a false reality for him to go to. And it's very video gamey. The number of people, very much like a role-playing game where the number of people in the world is very small. They all interact in extremely simplistic ways. They're basically NPCs in a video game town. The way every time Frybo hands him a thing of fry bits, the previous one just vanishes. That's very video gamey. I remember when Final Fantasy Tactics first came out, being impressed as hell, because here was a Final Fantasy game where characters could actually pick up objects in the story scenes. Not cutscenes, use the game engine, but they could pick up and manipulate, like, they could pick glass up off a table, or pick up one of the orbs that were important to the plot. That kind of thing was hard to do in, like, classic video games. I imagine it's still relatively hard to do, but probably easier with modern tech than it was. Back in the day, it was effectively impossible, you know. If, you know, so, for example, character would put down food in front of another one in, say, Chrono Trigger, and then they would do a little running motion, and the food would just vanish. You know, that was the limit of technology. And that's exactly what you see here, where, like, every time he puts the fries down, it replaces the existing fries. The number of fries doesn't increase because he's straining the limits of what the system can handle. It would have been perfection itself if, when there were lots of people, there'd been some flicker and slowdown. That would have been just ideal, but the concept is there. So, yeah, I really enjoyed that. I loved that his dad basically just talked in dadisms, and that rapidly broke down as Steven started to realize what was going on. But ultimately he wishes to return to the other gems, and that's when it allows him to leave. Because what's going on there is that it's just like the donut, just like the game. Living entirely inside his own head and his own imagination cannot provide him with real sustenance. As messy as it is with the gems, as difficult as it is interacting with other people, where sometimes, it can't be about what you want all the time. Sometimes their wishes matter. There's no sustenance to be had from yourself. You cannot feed yourself the things that you need from other people. So, you know, he has to go out back to them and accept that, you know, that means things won't always go his way. It's a cute little, I guess, you know, moral or message or whatever you want to call it, but it's not made excessively overt, and it comes at the tail end of an episode that's been nicely creepy. So, yeah, well done, show. Next episode was Coach Steven, which I wanted more fusions. I got more fusions. Holy crap. Sugarlight? That's what it sounded like. Never heard of that particular stone, but okay, I'm sure it is a thing. Or I misheard it and it's some other stone I've never heard of. Didn't look that one up. Sugarlight is kind of terrifying. She's enormous, immensely strong, and completely out of control, as a fusion of garnet and amethyst. Two interesting things noticed in this episode that I'll talk about at the end of talking about it. But before that, I mean, the main focus of the episode really is not them at all. The Pearl Amethyst fusion, which I forget what it was called, but it was awesome. That was very much about the relationship between Pearl and Amethyst, and Steven's role in between them. This was about Pearl and Steven's relationship. This was about Pearl, who really is Steven's mother figure. That's become very clear. I love the little moment of her grumbling about having to pick up after him. I also love that he has like 5 identical shirts with the star on it. It always amuses me when shows, you know, play with the unchanging wardrobes of animated characters. Anyway, yeah, she's very much his mother figure, and she's hurt that she does all this to take care of him. She's basically his primary caregiver, and he is more excited about the big, dangerous, new, cool Sugarlight, and is inspired by that, and she wishes that he would recognize her strength and be inspired by her. Which, of course, later, he does acknowledge her strength and inspires her to stand up to Sugarlight, because, you know, Pearl is tremendously strong. She is a skilled and graceful fighter, and she is also, tough as nails. In her own way, she is as stubborn as Amethyst and as tough as Garnet. I like Pearl a lot. I think this episode finally put her over the line. She's now a little bit ahead of Amethyst. Part of that is just that she's gotten the most focus out of any of the gems, I think. But part of it is just, even though in real life I would find her tremendously annoying because neat freaks and I don't tend to get along very well because I'm a gigantic slob, but I really like her as a character. And she's really appealing and I enjoy her a lot. And, so that was great. Seeing Steven trying to get everyone, to work out was cute. Had a musical number. I don't think we've had one of those before that I can recall. It was nice. Musical numbers are interesting because traditionally the role they serve is as, like in most musicals, is as a way to exhibit how a character feels. It's kind of like the pause button has been put on the plot, and now this character sings about their feelings. It might be a huge show-stopping number, but it's still ultimately, a way of depicting what's happening inside the characters. Which, as a side effect, means that musical numbers are generally not diegetic. That is, we are not, when we're watching a musical, supposed to believe that the characters are actually, quote, within the, quote, reality of the work, bursting into song. But, particularly in cartoons, that tends to be not 100%. And we see that here, where at the, very often for humor, at the end of the musical number, which we subconsciously know is not real. And I'm putting scare quotes around everything because, of course, it's fiction. All of it's fiction. None of it's real. But at the end of it, we find out, no, actually, this musical number did happen diegetically, and the other people are annoyed that Steven has been singing instead of working out. And that actually works, because Steven is exactly the kind of kid who would randomly burst into song. And I can see Pearl singing while she cleans up after everybody as well. Those are reasonable things. Not to mention, it's a funny little one-shot gag. Now, two things I noticed that were very interesting in this episode. One was the comment that Pearl made to Sugarlight that you've been fused for too long, you're losing yourselves. Which is interesting. It's a very common thing in stories about, like, transformation magic and that kind of thing. That a person can lose themselves in their transformation and become whatever they're transformed into. It's one of the dangers of transforming in the Wizard of Earthsea books. It's one of the dangers of borrowing in the Discworld books. And apparently it's a danger of fusing, that the gems could become a single person. Now, the reason that's so interesting is because I was watching very closely when Garnet and Amethyst did their little fusion dance, because of the way that Pearl covered Steven's eyes right before it, and that cued me in, okay, there's going to be something sexual to this, which implies some interesting things about fusion and the way gems feel about fusion, and the relationship among the gems. That there's a sex-like component to it. And it, was a lot of, especially on Garnet's part, a lot of very sexual posing, and then Amethyst diving headfirst into her crotch, and that was interesting. But even more interesting was it looked rather a lot like, at the moment of transformation, like when they turned into just gems and light, like the actual core gemstones, there were 3 gems, implying that one of Garnet and Amethyst is actually a fusion, which is interesting, to say the least. Um, my money is on Amethyst. And the reason I think that is because, like, the defining thing about Sugarlight is that she is out of control. She is, enormous and chaotic and out of control. And that comes out of being, fused from two elements that clearly conflict. Not in the, personality we don't like each other conflict of Pearl and Amethyst, which, by the way, now that we're equating fusing to sex, that explains a lot about why them not getting along meant they couldn't fuse effectively. But with, Garnet and Amethyst fusing, it became this very chaotic thing, so I'm thinking maybe, like, the way Amethyst is often out of control implies that there's these oppositional elements within her, that she is a fusion that went on too long. It's a thought. We'll see. On the other hand, there's some visual hints, because, like, when they fuse, they have multiple sets of body parts. Like, I noticed both fusions so far have had 4 arms. And this thing had, Sugarlight had, 5 eyes, which is 2 from Amethyst and 3 from Garnet. Now, when we first saw Garnet's 3rd eye, I said, oh, okay, it's the traditional spot. It's the 3rd eye. It represents her, spiritual, enlightened state. Could also be that she's a fusion of a 2-eye gem and a 1-eye gem? I got nothing. My money's still on Amethyst, though, because just her personality, and the way it could be a product of, these oppositional elements clashing, resulting in a very chaotic, big kind of a self. I have a feeling I'll find out eventually, though. And then the 3rd episode, Lars, whatever. This was Joke Victim. And it was basically an exploration of Lars and Sadie's relationship, which is not even remotely a healthy relationship, good God. Lars is a jerk. We've been down this road. We know Lars is a jerk. He's a jerk. And Sadie, for whatever reason, has a crush on him, because apparently Sadie's life is so terrible that little bit of niceness from Lars was enough to, make her have a crush on him. God, that's depressing. And Lars is a jerk. Lars eats a super spicy donut as a prank because Sadie partially realizes what a jerk he is, and she and Steven prank him. It, of course, goes out of control and starts fires everywhere because that's what this show does. The, flame out of mouth spiciness gag becomes an actual fire hazard. Which is cute and I like it, but I just really have zero patience for Lars. He is easily my least favorite character so far. By least favorite, I mean, I would be totally cool if he never showed up in the show again. 'Cause he's terrible, and he's a particular kind of terrible that shows up in everything, everywhere, and never stops being terrible. There's not going to be a character arc. I highly doubt there's going to be a character arc for Lars. I highly doubt that he's going to, realize how terrible he's been and become better. No. He's going to be the Spike the Dragon of this show, the Ross Geller. The complete freaking asshole who is terrible to everyone, and everyone always forgives him at the end. Yeah, not a character I like. And it's a very common character because Americans love assholes. Bit of a downer note, but still, overall, the first 2 episodes were so good, it more than made up for my antipathy towards Lars. And I mean, the third episode had some good gags in it. I loved the line about VHS tapes, like, something about, it's like a DVD in a box, or something like that. It was great. And Steven getting really into the terrible 80s instructional video was wonderful. Yeah, I've worked retail. I've seen those videos. Like, all of that was great. It's just Lars is terrible. And I hate him. Also, he has those freaky things in his ears that just make, like... I don't judge. If you want to put whatever those things are called in your ears, okay. Just... they squick me out. I'm sorry. Like... ow. Ow, ow, ow. Yeah. Mostly that was just because he's terrible. And I hate that character type. Sadie, honey, listen. I know people have shat on you your entire life because you're a short fat girl. And people are terrible to short fat girls. But believe me, you can do better than Lars. Like, you don't have to fall for somebody just because they were nice to you once and they're a jerk the rest of the time. Don't go down that road. Please, please, please. Let Sadie realize that's a terrible road to go down. Please. Or just have Lars disappear and never be mentioned again. That would be okay as well. Anyway, that's about it. Little note on the future. Next time will be a normal vlog covering episodes 22 through 24. At the request of followers on my Patreon, I will then do a live viewing, a live blog of episodes 25 and 26. So I'll record myself watching those just like I did with the Korra finale. Then back to normal episodes for a while. As I record this, Tumblr has exploded with stuff about the season finale. I have successfully avoided any and all spoilers. Hopefully I will continue to do so. Normally I don't care, but the whole point of this vlog is for me to kind of react as things go and not have a good idea of what's coming. So, spoilers, screw with it. Hopefully, like I said, I will continue to avoid them. Thus far, I have done so, and hopefully somewhere in the next few days, Tumblr will calm the fuck down. Like, I literally have no idea what happened to make Tumblr so ecstatic. Must have been a good episode. We'll see if I like it too in about 10 weeks. Okay. Talk to you next time. Bye.